I am sitting in my one-bedroom apartment in Portland, Oregon, holding a warm coffee mug and looking out the window at this crisp autumn morning. I moved here just 2 months ago, and every sunrise still feels like freedom. The silence in my home is peaceful now, but it was not always this way. There was a time when silence meant I was being ignored, overlooked, invisible in my own family. But let me tell you how I got here and why walking away from my family was the best decision I ever made. Before I dive in, I would love to know where you are watching from. Are you someone who has ever felt invisible in your own family? Hit that like button if this resonates, and do not forget to subscribe for more real stories. Now let me take you back to where it all began. My family lived in the suburbs of Denver, Colorado, in a modest 3-bedroom house that always seemed too small for our big personalities. My father, Richard, was 52 years old and worked part-time as a mechanic after injuring his back a few years ago. The injury left him bitter and constantly complaining about money, though he refused to admit that his reduced income was the real problem. My mother, Susan, was 49 and had been a homemaker for most of her adult life. She struggled with mild mental health issues that she refused to acknowledge or treat, preferring to blame her anxiety and depression on external circumstances. She spent most days watching television or scrolling through social media, occasionally cooking dinner when the mood struck her. Then there was my younger sister Madison, 22 years old and in her senior year at Colorado State University studying marketing. Madison was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. She was bubbly, social, and had never worked a day in her life because our parents believed her only job should be getting good grades. My youngest sibling was Tyler, 19 years old, and a sophomore studying engineering at the same university. Tyler was quiet but entitled, assuming that everything would always be provided for him without question. He had inherited our father's stubborn streak and our mother's tendency to avoid responsibility. And then there was me, Gloria, the oldest, at 28. I worked as a financial analyst for a large corporation in downtown Denver, earning $85,000 a year. I had my own apartment about 30 minutes away from the family home, which gave me the space I needed to maintain my sanity while still being close enough to help when needed. What my family never knew or chose not to acknowledge was that I had been quietly carrying most of their financial burden for the past 4 years. When I graduated college and landed my first real job, I noticed how stressed my parents were about money. Madison was starting college, Tyler was finishing high school, and my father's back problems were getting worse. Without being asked, I started contributing. First, it was just Madison's tuition payments of $23,000 per year, which I set up as automatic transfers directly to the university. I told my parents I had received a bonus and wanted to help out, and they accepted it without much gratitude, as if I owed them this support. Then came Tyler's tuition when he started college the following year. $18,000 annually, also set up as automatic payments. Again, my parents accepted this contribution as if it were expected rather than generous. The house payments were next. My parents paid $2,200 per month in mortgage and property taxes, but my father's reduced income made this increasingly difficult. I quietly started sending $1,200 monthly to help cover this expense, telling them it was temporary help that somehow became permanent. The utility bills were another burden I absorbed. $300 monthly for electricity, gas, water, and internet. I set up automatic payments for these as well, ensuring my family never had to worry about their lights being shut off or their internet being disconnected. Car insurance for the entire family cost $450 monthly. Since I was the only one with stable income and good credit, all the vehicles were under my policy. My father drove an older pickup truck, my mother had a small sedan. Madison drove a compact car, and Tyler had a motorcycle for campus transportation. Groceries and household supplies were yet another expense I covered. I sent $600 monthly for food and necessities, which my mother used to stock their pantry and refrigerator. She never had to worry about whether they could afford groceries or toiletries. All of these payments were made quietly through direct transfers and automatic systems. I never mentioned them during family dinners or gatherings. I never asked for gratitude or recognition. I simply saw needs and filled them, believing this was what family meant. But instead of appreciation, I received constant criticism. My family viewed my independent living situation as abandonment. They saw my career focus as selfishness. They believed I was too good for them, too busy for them, too successful for my own good. Madison frequently complained that I did not spend enough time at family gatherings, conveniently forgetting that I showed up for every birthday, holiday, and special occasion despite my demanding work schedule. She would make comments like, "Gloria thinks she is too important to hang out with us regular people." Tyler echoed these sentiments, often suggesting that my education and career had made me arrogant. He would say things like, "Remember when Gloria was actually fun before she became a corporate robot?" His words stung because they revealed how little he understood about the sacrifices I made for his education. My parents pressured me constantly about marriage and children. They wanted me to settle down, have babies, and presumably become financially dependent on a husband rather than maintaining my independence. They saw my single status as a character flaw rather than a personal choice. The irony was devastating. While I was quietly ensuring their financial stability, they were criticizing me for not being present enough, not being grateful enough for what they had given me, and not living my life according to their expectations. The breaking point came on a Sunday evening in late September. I had driven to the family house for our weekly dinner, something I rarely missed despite my busy schedule. The atmosphere was tense from the moment I walked through the door. Madison was stressed about her midterm exams and had been complaining all week about the pressure she was under. She needed new textbooks and supplies, which meant another few $100s in expenses. Tyler was also feeling financial pressure, needing money for laboratory fees and additional course materials that had not been covered in his initial tuition payments. My mother, Susan, was particularly anxious that day. She had received several medical bills from recent doctor visits related to her ongoing mental health struggles, and the costs were adding up quickly. She spent the first 30 minutes of my visit listing every expense and worry as if I were responsible for solving all of these problems. My father, Richard, was having one of his bad days with back pain. He was grumpy and short-tempered, snapping at everyone who spoke to him. He had been drinking beer since early afternoon, which always made his mood worse and his tongue sharper. During dinner, I mentioned that I was also feeling stressed because of increased demands at my workplace. Our department was understaffed, and I had been working 60-hour weeks for the past month. I was exhausted and overwhelmed, struggling to maintain work-life balance while meeting all my responsibilities. Instead of offering support or understanding, my family reacted as if I were making excuses or seeking attention. Madison rolled her eyes and said, "What do you have to be stressed about? You live alone, you have no real responsibilities, and your job pays you more money than most people ever see." Tyler joined in, adding, "Yeah, all you have to worry about is yourself. Some of us have real problems and real pressure. You just sit in your fancy office and count money all day." I tried to explain that work pressure was still valid stress regardless of my salary or living situation. I pointed out that everyone experiences challenges differently, and dismissing my feelings was not fair or helpful. My father had been silent during this exchange, but his face was growing redder with each passing moment. Finally, he slammed his beer bottle down on the table, causing everyone to jump. "You think you are so stressed?" he shouted, his voice echoing through the small dining room. "Try living paycheck to paycheck. Try wondering if you can afford groceries this week. Try dealing with real problems instead of your white-collar complaints." I remained calm, speaking in measured tones. "Dad, I understand that money is tight. I know things are difficult for everyone right now. I am just saying that I also have pressures and challenges in my life." Madison interrupted again, her voice dripping with sarcasm. What pressures? What challenges? You live in a nice apartment by yourself. You have a good job. You have no children, no husband, no real responsibilities. What exactly are you complaining about?" Tyler nodded in agreement. "Seriously, Gloria, all you care about is your career and your perfect little life. You show up here once a week, eat our food, and then disappear back to your bubble. What do you actually contribute to this family?" This question hit me like a physical blow. What did I contribute? Only the financial stability that allowed Madison to attend college without student loans. Only the tuition payments that kept Tyler in his engineering program. Only the mortgage assistance that kept a roof over their heads. Only the utilities, insurance, and groceries that maintained their standard of living. But I had never told them about these contributions explicitly. I had never demanded recognition or gratitude. I had simply given quietly, assuming that love and family responsibility were reward enough. My father stood up from his chair, his face flushed with anger and alcohol. He pointed his finger directly at my face, his voice rising to a shout that I am sure the neighbors could hear. "All you do is take you have never given this family anything!" He screamed, his words echoing off the walls. "You come here and eat our food, you take our time and attention, and then you go back to your selfish life. If you have any pride left, maybe you should just leave and stop pretending you care." The silence that followed was deafening. My mother looked down at her plate, refusing to make eye contact with anyone. Madison and Tyler stared at their father with expressions of agreement rather than shock. No one defended me. No one corrected his statement. No one acknowledged the truth of my contributions. In that moment, I realized that my family truly believed Richard's words. They genuinely thought I was a taker rather than a giver. They saw my presence as a burden rather than a blessing. They wanted me gone. I stood up slowly, gathering my purse and jacket with hands that were surprisingly steady. "Okay," I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. "I understand." I walked toward the front door, pausing for just a moment to see if anyone would stop me apologize or take back the hurtful words. Instead, I heard Tyler mutter, "Finally, maybe now we can have family dinners without all the drama." I drove home in complete silence, my mind strangely calm despite the magnitude of what had just occurred. By the time I reached my apartment, I had made my decision. That evening, I sat at my computer and began the process of disconnecting myself from my family's financial life. I canceled every automatic transfer, every recurring payment, and every financial commitment I had made on their behalf. Madison's tuition payment scheduled to post the following Monday was canceled. Tyler's semester fees due at the end of the week were stopped. The mortgage assistance that helped my parents keep their house was terminated immediately. I removed my family's vehicles from my car insurance policy effective at the end of the current billing cycle. I canceled the utilities accounts where I was listed as a responsible party. I removed myself from the family cell phone plan that I had been paying for entirely. I called my bank and requested new account numbers, ensuring that no one from my family could access my financial information or request emergency assistance. I changed my direct deposit to a different bank, entirely creating a clean separation between my resources and theirs. Within 2 hours, I had systematically removed myself from every financial obligation and connection to my family. The amount of money involved was staggering when I calculated the total over $60,000 annually that I had been contributing without recognition or appreciation. I booked a flight to Portland, Oregon for the following week. I had always wanted to live in the Pacific Northwest, and this seemed like the perfect opportunity for a fresh start. I arranged for a remote work agreement with my company, allowing me to maintain my job while relocating. I packed only the essentials, planning to start over with new furniture and belongings rather than asking my family for help moving. I wanted a complete break, a clean slate, a chance to build a life where my contributions would be valued and acknowledged. Before leaving Denver, I wrote a simple note and mailed it to my parents' house. The message was brief: "Taking your advice, living my life now, do not contact me." The first week in Portland was surprisingly peaceful. No one called, no one texted. No one seemed to notice that I had disappeared from their lives. I began to wonder if my family was actually relieved to have me gone, just as they had indicated during our final dinner together. I found a charming apartment in a neighborhood full of young professionals and artists. I enrolled in a yoga class and joined a hiking group, activities I had never had time for while managing my family's needs alongside my career demands. For the first time in years, my entire paycheck belonged to me. I could afford organic groceries, nice wine, and weekend trips without worrying about whether my family needed financial assistance. The freedom was intoxicating. By the second week, I received my first contact from home. My father called, his voice casual and unconcerned. "Hey, Gloria, the electric company is saying there is a problem with the automatic payment. Can you check on that?" I stared at my phone screen, watching his name flash with an incoming call, and chose not to answer. He left no voicemail. During the third week, my mother sent several text messages. "Gloria, honey, we need to talk about the bills. There seems to be some confusion with the bank. Please call me when you get this." I read her messages but did not respond. Instead, I blocked their phone numbers and email addresses, ensuring that I would not be tempted to cave in to their demands or guilt trips. The fourth week brought more urgent messages from my parents sent through my aunt's phone since they could no longer reach me directly. These messages revealed the growing panic as they realized the extent of my financial support and their complete dependence on my contributions. But it was the end of the month that brought the real consequences. Madison's tuition payment bounced, triggering automatic late fees and holds on her class registration. Tyler's dormitory fees were declined, forcing him to scramble for alternative housing. The family's mortgage payment was short by $1,200, resulting in a late payment notice from the bank. Their car insurance policy was canceled for non-payment, leaving all 4 family vehicles uninsured and unregistered. The utilities began sending disconnection notices threatening to shut off electricity and gas service within 10 days. The family cell phone plan was suspended, cutting off service to everyone except me. My parents had to purchase prepaid phones to maintain communication, an additional expense they had not budgeted for in their suddenly tight financial situation. Exactly 1 month after I left Denver, my phone rang with a call from an unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it, assuming it was a spam call, but something made me answer. "Gloria?" Madison's voice was barely recognizable through her tears. "Please, please do not hang up. I am calling from my friend's phone because ours got shut off." I listened silently as my sister sobbed into the phone, her usual confidence and entitlement replaced by desperation and fear. "Why did the tuition payments stop?" she cried. "The financial aid office called me into a meeting today. They said my account is past due by $23,000. They are threatening to drop me from classes and withhold my transcript." In the background, I could hear Tyler's voice. "Tell her about the dorm. Tell her I had to move back home because I could not pay the fees." Madison continued through her tears. "Tyler had to leave campus. He is sleeping on our couch now because his room was reassigned to someone else. Mom has been crying every day because she does not understand what happened to the money. Dad's truck got repossessed yesterday because the insurance lapsed and he got into a fender bender." The desperation in her voice was painful to hear, but I remained calm. When she finally paused to catch her breath, I spoke quietly. "I thought I never gave this family anything." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Madison's crying stopped abruptly, replaced by the sound of shocked breathing. "What do you mean?" she whispered. "That is what Dad said. All I do is take. I have never given anything to this family, so I stopped taking." "Gloria, we were wrong." Madison's voice became frantic. "We were so wrong, we did not know. We never realized that you were paying for everything." Tyler grabbed the phone from her. "Gloria, please come back. We are sorry. We had no idea that you were supporting us like that." I could hear my mother crying in the background and my father's gruff voice saying something about being too proud to admit he was wrong. "You made your choice," I said simply. "Now live with it." "But we are family," Madison pleaded. "Families make mistakes. Families forgive each other." "Real families appreciate each other," I replied. "Real families acknowledge contributions. Real families do not scream at someone to leave and then expect them to keep paying bills." I hung up the phone and immediately blocked that number as well. Over the following weeks, I received updates about my family's situation through mutual friends and distant relatives who remained in contact with both sides. The picture they painted was one of complete financial collapse and emotional devastation. Madison was forced to drop out of college mid-semester, losing her entire senior year and delaying graduation indefinitely. She moved back into her childhood bedroom and took a job at a local diner serving coffee and pancakes instead of preparing for her marketing career. Tyler's grades plummeted as he worked 2 part-time jobs to pay for basic living expenses and attempted to continue his engineering studies. He was placed on academic probation and warned that he might lose his spot in the competitive program. My mother suffered what the family called a nervous breakdown, finally admitting that she needed professional help for her mental health issues. She started seeing a therapist twice a week, an expense that further strained their already impossible budget. My father's pride was completely shattered. For the first time, he was forced to confront the reality of his family's financial dependence and his own failures as a provider. He took on additional part-time work, despite his back problems barely earning enough to cover basic necessities. The house went into foreclosure proceedings within 3 months. Unable to make full mortgage payments without my assistance, my parents were forced to begin the process of selling their home and downsizing to a smaller rental property. Madison's dreams of a college graduation party and post-graduation apartment were replaced by the harsh reality of working-class life and financial struggle. She began to understand, perhaps for the first time, the value of education and opportunity. Tyler started researching military service as a way to pay for college, realizing that his previous entitlement and assumptions about family support were completely unfounded. During this period, I was building my new life in Portland with intentional focus and genuine happiness. I started attending therapy sessions to work through the complex emotions surrounding my family situation and my own patterns of overgiving and under-receiving. My therapist helped me understand that my previous behavior, while generous, had actually enabled my family's dysfunction and entitlement. By always rescuing them from financial consequences, I had prevented them from learning responsibility and self-sufficiency. I made new friends who appreciated my generosity without taking advantage of it. I joined community groups and volunteer organizations where my contributions were acknowledged and valued. I started dating someone who celebrated my success rather than resenting it. For the first time in my adult life, I was learning to set boundaries and prioritize my own well-being. The guilt that initially accompanied my decision to cut ties gradually faded, replaced by a sense of self-respect and empowerment. I discovered hobbies and interests that I had abandoned during my years of family caretaking. I took art classes, learned to rock climb, and traveled to places I had always wanted to visit but never felt I could afford while supporting my family. 6 months after leaving Denver, my family was forced to sell their house and move into a 2-bedroom apartment in a less desirable neighborhood. The downsizing was dramatic and painful, but it also forced them to confront the reality of living within their actual means rather than relying on my hidden subsidies. Madison eventually wrote me a long letter which I received through my aunt's address since my family still did not know my new location. In the letter, she took full responsibility for the family's treatment of me and acknowledged the enormous sacrifices I had made on their behalf. She admitted that she had been spoiled and entitled, never questioning where the money for her education and lifestyle was coming from. She expressed genuine remorse for the things she had said and the assumptions she had made about my character and motivations. My mother also sent a letter delivered through the same family intermediary. Her message was shorter but equally heartfelt, acknowledging her failures as a parent to protect me from my father's anger and to recognize my contributions to the family's stability. Richard and Tyler never reached out directly, their pride apparently preventing them from admitting their mistakes or asking for forgiveness. However, mutual family members reported that both men had expressed regret privately and wished they could undo the damage they had caused. As I sit here in my Portland apartment exactly 1 year after leaving my family behind, I feel a peace that I never experienced during my years of silent sacrifice. I learned that being invisible in your own family is worse than being alone. Sometimes you have to lose people to find yourself. And sometimes the people who claim to love you the most are the ones who see you the least. The question is not whether they will realize what they lost, but whether you will remember what you are worth. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Have you found yourself giving and giving without any recognition? Share your story in the comments below. I would love to hear how you found your way to self-worth. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories about family boundaries and finding your voice. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that their contributions matter even if their family does not see them yet. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes the greatest act of love is learning to love yourself enough to walk away. I wish you the courage to know your worth and the strength to demand the respect you deserve.